stood in that white dress for 6 hours, watching our guests leave one by one. When I finally found him, he was in our honeymoon suite, but not alone. What I did next didn't just end our marriage. It ended his entire world. And I don't regret a single second. If you've ever felt betrayed by someone you trusted, completely hit that like button. This story will shock you to your core. You know that feeling when everything in your life seems to align perfectly. When you look around and think, this is it, this is my fairy tale moment. That's exactly how I felt on September 15th, standing in front of the full-length mirror in the bridal suite of the Grand Ocean View Hotel. My name is Iris, and I thought I was living the perfect love story. At 28, I had built a successful marketing career, owned my own condo, and finally found the man I was going to spend forever with. Cole seemed like everything I had ever dreamed of. Tall, charming, with this infectious laugh that made everyone in the room turn their heads. He was a real estate developer who talked about our future like he was designing the most beautiful blueprint you could imagine. The morning of our wedding, I woke up with butterflies dancing in my stomach, the good kind, you know what I mean. That excited, can't believe this is really happening feeling. My maid of honor, Bryn, was there with me, helping me into my dress, telling me how radiant I looked. Bryn had been my best friend since college, the kind of person who knew all my secrets, who I called when I needed to laugh or cry, or just talk through my thoughts. She seemed almost as excited as I was, adjusting my veil with tears in her eyes. "You deserve this happiness, Iris," she whispered as she fastened the last button on my dress. "Cole is so lucky to have you." Looking back now, I wonder how she managed to say those words with such conviction. The ceremony was everything I had dreamed of. 200 of our closest friends and family gathered on the terrace overlooking the Pacific Ocean. The sunset painted the sky in shades of pink and gold. And when Cole took my hands at the altar, his were trembling slightly. I remember thinking it was sweet that this strong, confident man was nervous about promising to love me forever. "You look incredible," he whispered just before the officiant began, and the way he looked at me made my heart skip. "I can't believe you're going to be my wife. We had spent $80,000 on this day. I know that sounds excessive, but we both came from comfortable families, and this felt like an investment in our future. The flowers alone cost more than most people spend on their entire wedding, but seeing the joy on our parents' faces, watching our friends celebrate with us, it all felt worth it. The reception flowed like a dream. Our first dance was to At Last by Ida. James and Cole spun me around the dance floor, like we were the only two people in the world. My father gave a speech that made everyone cry, talking about how proud he was of the woman I had become and how happy he was that I had found someone who cherished me the way Cole did. That's when I should have noticed something was wrong. During my father-daughter dance, I caught a glimpse of Cole near the bar, checking his phone with a frown. When our dance ended, I looked around for him, expecting him to cut in or at least catch my eye with one of his trademark winks, but Cole was nowhere to be found. At first, I didn't panic. Weddings are overwhelming, and I figured he had stepped outside for some air, or maybe gone to freshen up. But as the minutes turned into an hour, and the hour stretched toward 2, that butterfly feeling in my stomach transformed into something much darker. Guests started approaching me with confused smiles. Where did the groom disappear to? They'd ask with little laughs, assuming this was some kind of joke or surprise he was planning. I wish it had been that simple. By hour 3, I was no longer making excuses. The remaining guests were giving me those pitying looks that made my skin crawl, you know. The ones, that mixture of concern and second-hand embarrassment, that makes you want to disappear into the ground. My mother kept squeezing my hand and whispering, "I'm sure there's a perfectly reasonable explanation, sweetheart," but deep in my gut, I knew something was terribly wrong. I had searched everywhere. The hotel bar, where a few stragglers were still nursing their drinks, shaking their heads when I asked if they'd seen Cole. The parking garage where his silver BMW sat, exactly where he'd left it. Even the men's restroom, where I sent my cousin Daniel to check, earning me nothing but an apologetic shrug. That's when I remembered the honeymoon suite. I had booked the penthouse for the night, another extravagant expense. That seemed romantic at the time. Maybe Cole had gone up there to surprise me. Or maybe he was feeling overwhelmed and needed space to collect himself. That had to be it. My rational mind clung to this explanation like a lifeline as I rode the elevator to the 20th floor. The hotel manager, Mrs. Chen, had been watching the whole disaster unfold from behind the reception desk. When I approached her with tears threatening to spill, she didn't hesitate to hand me the master key card. Room 2012, she said softly. Her eyes full of the same pity I'd been seeing all night. I hope you find what you're looking for, dear. I wish she had refused. The walk down that hallway felt like an eternity. My heels clicked against the marble floor, echoing in the silence, and my wedding dress rustled with each step. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the keycard steady. Part of me wanted to turn around, to go back downstairs and pretend everything was fine, but I needed to know the truth. I slid the card into the slot and heard the lock click open. The first thing I noticed was Bryn's bridesmaid dress, crumpled on the floor, that beautiful lavender silk that had cost me $300, and countless hours of alterations. For a split second my brain tried to make sense of it. Maybe she had spilled something and needed to change. Maybe she was helping Cole with some surprise. Then I saw them. My husband of exactly 6 hours was in our honeymoon suite bed with my best friend of 7 years. Not just lying there together actively, passionately, destroying everything I thought I knew about my life. The sounds they were making, the way they moved together. It was clear this wasn't some drunken mistake or moment of weakness. This was practiced, familiar, intimate in a way that spoke of months, maybe years of deception. I must have made some sound. A gasp or whimper. Something, because they both froze and turned toward the door. Cole's face went white as marble, but Bryn looked almost relieved. Like she was tired of pretending. Iris. I can explain, Cole stammered, scrambling to cover himself with the hotel sheet, the same sheets that were supposed to be ours tonight. This isn't what it looks like. I stood there in my $10,000 wedding dress, feeling like someone had reached into my chest and ripped out my heart with their bare hands. The betrayal was so complete, so devastating that for a moment I couldn't even speak. Then Bryn sat up, making no effort to cover herself, and delivered the words that shattered what was left of my world. Actually, Iris, it's exactly what it looks like. We've been together for 8 months. He never loved you. He just needed your money and connections to save his failing business. She paused, tilting her head with mock sympathy. I'm sorry you had to find out this way, but honestly, I'm relieved it's finally over. The slap happened before I even realized I was moving. My hand connected with her cheek with a sound that echoed through the room, and she recoiled with genuine shock. You lying, backstabbing. I couldn't even finish the sentence. The rage was so pure, so overwhelming. That word seemed inadequate. Here's the thing about betrayal. It has a way of burning away everything soft and naive inside you, leaving behind something harder, sharper, more focused. As I walked out of that hotel room, my wedding dress trailing behind me like a ghost of my former self, I wasn't crying anymore. The tears had evaporated, replaced by something much more dangerous. Clarity. I had to face the remaining guests. Of course, 50 people who had stayed to the bitter end, nursing their drinks and whispering among themselves about where the groom could possibly be. When I walked into that reception hall, still in my dress, but with my veil torn and my makeup smeared, the room fell silent. The wedding is over, I announced, my voice carrying across the space with surprising steadiness. Cole won't be joining us for the rest of the evening. My father stepped forward, his face a mask of barely controlled fury. Iris, what happened? Where is he? Ask him yourself, I said, gesturing toward the elevator where Cole was finally making his appearance, hastily dressed and looking like he'd rather be anywhere else on earth. He's been busy. The confrontation that followed was ugly. Cole tried everything: tears, apologies, promises that it would never happen again. He even had the audacity to suggest we could work through this, that marriage was about forgiveness and second chances. The guests watched in horrified fascination, as my fairy tale wedding dissolved into the kind of drama people gossip about for years. But here's what Cole didn't understand about me. I had spent 8 years building a successful marketing career by being strategic, analytical, and ruthlessly efficient when necessary. And as I listened to his pathetic excuses, as I watched him try to manipulate the narrative, even now a plan began forming in my mind. I went home that night to our shared apartment, the one we'd decorated together, where I'd imagined we'd start our married life. But instead of packing my bags or crying into a pint of ice cream like he probably expected, I sat down at his laptop. Cole had always been careless with his passwords, and I had memorized them long ago, during the casual intimacy of our relationship. What I found there changed everything. Email after email between Cole and Bryn, dating back 10 months, not just love letters, but detailed discussions about their plan. How they would wait until after the wedding to avoid the embarrassment of calling it off. How Cole needed access to my business connections and the money from our joint accounts before he could afford to divorce me. How they had already been looking at apartments together, planning their real future, while I planned our fake wedding. But that wasn't even the worst part. Digging deeper into his files, I discovered that Cole's real estate business was a house of cards built on lies and stolen money. He had been embezzling from client escrow accounts for over a year, using their deposits to cover his mounting debts and maintain the facade of success that had attracted me in the first place. The man I had married wasn't just a cheater. He was a criminal who had planned to use me as his financial safety net. That's when I stopped being angry and started getting even. I spent the next 72 hours methodically documenting everything. Screenshots of every email, every financial transaction, every piece of evidence that painted a picture of the man Cole really was. I contacted a forensic accountant friend who helped me trace exactly how much money he had stolen and from whom. I froze our joint accounts before he could access them, legally protecting myself and his victims. But I wasn't done, not even close. Cole had built his reputation on being the charming family man, the guy who donated to local charities and coached Little League on weekends. His clients trusted him because they believed he had integrity, that he was someone who valued commitment and honesty. I was about to show them exactly who they'd been doing business with. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. But I served mine at exactly the right temperature. Scalding hot and impossible to ignore. I started with social media. You know how everyone posts those perfect wedding photos, the ones that make marriage look like a fairy tale. Well, I posted ours too, but with captions that told the real story. The photo of Cole and me exchanging vows got the caption, "Here's the moment. My husband promised to love and honor me. He was planning to divorce me 3 months later and steal my money." The picture of him kissing me at the altar. This kiss happened 6 hours before. I found him in bed with my maid of honor. Within hours, those posts had been shared thousands of times. Our friends, our family, complete strangers, everyone was seeing exactly what kind of man Cole really was. But I wasn't finished. I contacted every single one of his clients with a detailed report of his embezzlement, complete with bank records and email evidence. I sent copies to the State Licensing Board, the Better Business Bureau, and the District Attorney's Office. I even reached out to the local news station that had done a puff piece on him the year before, calling him real estate's rising star. The house of cards collapsed faster than I had dared to hope. By day 5, Cole's business partners had not only dropped him, but were filing their own lawsuits. His clients were demanding investigations, and 3 separate law enforcement agencies had opened cases against him. The man who had spent months planning to humiliate and rob me was now facing felony charges and financial ruin. But perhaps the most satisfying part was watching what happened to Bryn. See, in all her calculations about stealing my husband, she had forgotten one crucial detail. She worked for my marketing company. When I returned to the office the following Monday, I had a termination letter waiting on her desk. Legal had found plenty of reasons: misuse of company time, violation of our personal conduct policies, breach of trust with a senior partner, her fiancé, the sweet guy she'd been with for 2 years, while secretly planning to run away with Cole, found out about everything when the story went viral. He packed her things and left them on her doorstep with a note that simply said, "I deserve better," the most beautiful irony. After I exposed everything, Cole didn't want Bryn anymore either. When the scandal broke and his world started crumbling, he actually had the nerve to call her a mistake, a moment of weakness that had cost him everything. The woman who had destroyed her entire life for him discovered that she had never meant anything to him at all 3 months later. I was sitting in my new corner office. I had used the chaos and publicity to launch my own marketing firm, specializing in crisis management and reputation recovery. Turns out, surviving public humiliation and fighting back makes you incredibly good at helping others do the same. That's when Cole tried to contact me one last time. A desperate text message from a number I didn't recognize. "Iris, please. I've lost everything. I know I don't deserve it, but I need your help. I'm sorry." I stared at that message for exactly 30 seconds. Then I blocked the number without responding. You see, I had learned something important in those dark months. Betrayal doesn't break you unless you let it. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you becomes the catalyst for the best version of yourself. Cole had thought he was closing the door on our marriage to step into something better. Instead, I closed the door on him forever and built an entire empire behind it. If this story inspired you to never settle for less than you deserve, smash that like button and subscribe for more stories of justice and karma. Share this with someone who needs to hear that betrayal isn't the end.